To be able to transfer files and our project over to the Raspberry Pi from our MacBook, we're going to use Terminal. And Terminal can be a little bit intimidating if you've never used it before, but it's actually pretty simple. And we're not going to go over a tutorial in this. If you want to learn more about the Terminal, there's a bunch of resources online on how you can do that. But for this video, we're just going to be focusing on the commands you need to know to transfer files to the Raspberry Pi. So when you open up the Terminal, you're going to have a window that looks something like this. The colors might be a little bit different. And the terminal works in this kind of directory format where you're in a current working directory. So when you open a terminal window, your current working directory is your home directory. And a directory can be confusing, but every time you hear a directory, you think of folder, because that's all they are. Directories are just folders. So we're in our home directory here, and then when we type cd desktop hydroponics, what this does is it changes our directory to hydroponics. So now our current working directory is our hydroponic directory, which if you remember is the directory or the folder that we made our project in. So this CD allowed us to change the working directory to the one where we had our folder. And we can type ls now list to list the files in that folder. And we expect main.py and pump.py, and that's what's there, because that's what we created in that last video. So from here, we can use this application called SCP, which allows us to transfer files from different hosts. So the command you want to use is scp tacr / hydroponics and then space and then pi at and then some IP. And that IP is going to be different for you. And it's the IP, if you remember on the Raspberry Pi when we typed in hostname taci, that's going to be that IP. So all this does is it says scp means transfer file, the tacr means we want a folder, / hydroponics just means hydroponics, and then that pi 192.168 whatever, that's the where we want to transfer to, so that's the IP of the Raspberry Pi, and then that and then that next thing, that ~, that's where we want to transfer it on the Raspberry Pi. So that's the home directory. So we're going to transfer this to the home directory of the Raspberry Pi. To make sure it works, we're going to use another application. This one's called SSH, and this one will just allow us to get a shell. So we're going to do SSH pi at 192.168 blah blah blah, that same IP we used in the last command, and this is going to allow us to have a shell on the Raspberry Pi. You have to actually type in the password correctly or it doesn't work, so do that. And now we have a shell in the Raspberry Pi, and you see it has the little tilde. That's the home directory, and if you remember, we transferred the file to the home directory, so we should see it here with ls, and we do. You see hydroponics, so we can do change directory again, cd into hydroponics, and we can do list files again, and we would expect main.py, pump.py, and that's what we get. So that's how you could transfer files from your home computer or your laptop to the Raspberry Pi with this SCP, and then you can do SSH to check it. And then to run that file, we do Python 3 main.py, which is as expected. So that's how we can run files externally on the Raspberry Pi from our laptop. So you do SSH pi at the IP, put in your password, change directory to hydroponics, and then Python 3 main.py. We do log out to get back into our computer, and then let's say we want to change something to see if it'll work. Let's create a file here. So let's just say it'll print hello, just to see if we can update things. So let's say we add a new file to our project, and we want to update the folder on our Raspberry Pi. So we just do the same command, scp tacr / whatever, and if you can see that the new file is there, it said it transferred it. So we should be able to now SSH into our Raspberry Pi, put in our password, and see that new file. So let's do this, enter it correctly. Yeah, and go in cd hydroponics again, ls, and we have our new file there. And we can run that file, and it prints hello. So this will allow us to write code on our MacBook, transfer that code to the Raspberry Pi, and then run that code on the Raspberry Pi from our MacBook. And this is really helpful because once your Raspberry Pi is in your system, in your hydroponic system, you're not going to be able to connect a monitor up to it or a mouse and keyboard. So we need a way to externally interact with the Raspberry Pi, and this is it. So we write the code on our MacBook, as you saw. We use that scp command, and you don't have to understand exactly how it works. You can just copy paste for the most part, and then from there you can do SSH to get a shell or a terminal window from the Raspberry Pi, and then in the Raspberry Pi you can run the files and run the program. And this way we don't have to have a monitor or a keyboard hooked up, and we're allowed to write code on our MacBook, which is a lot easier. So again, this terminal stuff, if you're new to it, it can be really confusing, and it can be a lot to take in, and this video obviously isn't going to cover it. So if this is really confusing and you want to learn more, just look up some basic terminal tutorials for a MacBook, and it's not that hard to get up to speed. It's just tough if you're new. So if you've never seen this before, I would highly recommend looking up some other resources, but the point of this video is to just show how we can transfer files and then how we can run those files on our Raspberry Pi from our MacBook.